Then Jesus answered her, "Woman, great is your faith. Let it be done for you as you wish." And her daughter was healed instantly.
Thank you, Margaret. I hope I wasn't too much of a distraction trying to get that camera to work. But what's going on? It seems like everything should be right. I forgot to take the camera cap off. Some days. Well, I want to talk a little bit this morning about something that's obviously on our minds a little bit, the beginning of the school year. And I don't remember actually my first day of kindergarten. Maybe some of you do, but I can tell you what, I do remember the first day of kindergarten for each one of my children. The oldest one and the youngest one, I was living in a place where I drove them to kindergarten the first day. But my middle child, well, I remember the breath catching in my throat, in the ears, tears pricking my eyes as I watched his skinny little legs with a too big backpack above it, climbing up onto the school bus when those doors lunged open and they just engulfed him inside. And I'm thinking, I can't believe that I thought I was ready for this. I wasn't. But he just did great. I was praying, of course, that he would have a happy day filled with excitement and some new experiences. And he was my shy guy, and I knew it was going to be probably harder for him than my other two children who are extroverts. But I was also praying that his day would be utterly devoid of any harsh words or prejudices that would eventually be something he would encounter on the playground or in a crowded hallway. But we all want kindergarten to be a special place, and I think there's a special place in heaven for kindergarten teachers and preschool teachers who are just God's love embodied, aren't they, Betty Ann? Well, in the first half of today's scripture, we hear Jesus rebuking the Pharisees and the other religious leaders. You know, while Jesus was busy teaching and healing people and feeding people, doing amazing things, the religious folks were finding fault for his disciples and the fact that, you know, probably before they handed out all that bread, they hadn't washed their hands. Well, like any parent whose beloved child has just been unjustly impugned, Jesus quickly gives a lesson about the difference between right and right. The daily practice of religious rites, well, our words can build up, can't they, in our services. Words matter. That's why we use liturgy. But we also know that words can be weapons. They can tear people down. Last week, after church in Havre, I talked to a boy, I think he's probably about 10 years old, and he was just on and on talking to me about his encounters with a guy in his town over the summer named Jace, who was bullying him, tried to steal his bike, what he had to do with his friends to try to protect them. They were trying to protect each other. We talked about it being okay to ask for help, and it turns out he knew that. He had asked the police department for help, which I thought was really good. And the police department officer was talking about how to de-escalate a situation and the importance of not calling names. We know that calling names in school is something that hurts, doesn't it? There's names and slurs that we know should never be uttered because of the harm that they cause. They're not easily retractable. They cause the harm the minute they pass our lips. We know what it looks like when we've said something and we've seen somebody's eyes sort of filled with tears or a little bit of hurt, and we know we've done wrong. Our words, even when we make an apology, we can't take them back. So Jesus is right that sometimes we are blind to the harm that is caused by our words. And each of us, of course, is born into a particular worldview, our culture, our traditions, even our faith, passed down for generations. It's a source of strength for us. It's a source of resilience for us. And we rightly have pride in our heritage. And yet there is also this temptation sometimes to somehow think that what we've got, what we believe, how we are, our rituals, our rites, well, they're better than others. And we suddenly start to think less of other people who do things differently, who have a different background. And, we don't know that this is happening because it's one of those insidious iceberg aspects of culture. That you think what you do is the way it's done until you encounter other people. And right off the bat we think, oh, that's weird. Why do they do it that way? Well, and then we learn over time that there's lots of people who aren't like us. And how to accept that. We don't realize, because we're conditioned to think less of people of other backgrounds, and yet words, and even silences sometimes, are the tell of prejudice, aren't they? Even Jesus. And today we hear in the gospel a story that's problematic, and it has been over the centuries, but scholars suggest that these problematic stories in the Bible are important. They're most certainly authentic because they're unflattering. The authors of the gospel included them for a very important reason, because we humans need to see our flaws, we need to struggle with the inconvenient truths of our culture, and wrestle with our own prejudices, even Jesus. Now this mother's shouting and her ruckus was made at a time when women were supposed to be silent, not heard. Moreover, women were never supposed to speak to men in public. The disciples are beside themselves, aren't they? Not only are they embarrassed, but they are travelers in a place that doesn't belong to them. They're strangers in a strange land. They really do not want to be caught up in drama. They could be arrested, and that's never good. With this, well, sometimes it's good, but not in this case. This mother is bold, and she's utterly shameless for the sake of her child, isn't she? Even public humiliation is not going to stop her from getting her daughter from getting what she needs from the hand of God. Why don't they want to help her? Well, her clothing and maybe her accent reveal that she's a Canaanite. She's a survivor of people who had been conquered by the Israelites in the time of Joshua, and then on through the times of King David. Their land, Canaan, was taken away from them, and they had been made slaves and servants. Now, she might not worship Israel's God. Perhaps she does, we don't know. But she knows what has been done to her people in the name of Israel's God, from Joshua all the way to King David. So she's calling out with a typical call of a beggar, have mercy, but more than that, she's making it very specific to Jesus. Lord, have mercy. Son of David, have mercy. She is calling upon him as the one who has both the right and the responsibility as the Messiah, the Son of God, to address her situation, to make her daughter well, because she has heard what he has done for other people's daughters. And he stops, and he listens. Now we can really only speculate about why he's silent. Perhaps he's waiting for his disciples to have a different response than they do. We don't really know. But in his silence, Jesus might be making a culturally appropriate response for this first century, but this mother is fed up with cultural traditions and religious laws. She just wants her daughter whole again. Theologian Ewan Russell Jones suggests that by calling Jesus Lord and Son of David, this Canaanite woman is very respectfully acknowledging the difference between their ethnic and religious heritage. And she's also making it clear that she knows that the God of Israel is a God of mercy. Does her plea for mercy from Jesus remind him that he had earlier in the gospel quoted the prophet Hosea to the Pharisees, "I desire mercy, not sacrifice"? Would his mercy extend to the very legitimate need of a sick daughter of a Canaanite mother? Or are her needs going to be sacrificed to historic prejudices of the Israelites against the Canaanites? They even called them dogs. When Jesus stops, the woman seizes the moment and sinks down upon her knees, and she says the very same words of faith that Peter said last week when he was sinking into the waters of the storm, "Lord, help me." And Jesus still stalls, saying that his mission is to the lost people of Israel. Does he mean this? Or is he saying what people are thinking? No matter, the mother argues back for God's mercy. Now, there's a very strong tradition in the Israelites of arguing and negotiating and even cajoling God to see their point of view. And remember, Abraham bargains for mercy upon the people who lived in Sodom and Gomorrah. Moses pleads with God about the reluctance he has to see Pharaoh because he has a speech impediment. And Jonah and all the prophets often argued and voiced their frustrations in their dialogues with God, and that was recorded in the Israelites' history. So, when this Canaanite mother begins to bandy metaphors with Jesus rather than accepting silence and a quasi-refusal, she is behaving exactly like God's most faithful servants. And perhaps Jesus begins to remember that he has ancestors. He and King David and others were women of Canaan. Rahab, Tamar, they're part of the family tree. Indeed, they are part of God's family. So this sort of verbal sparring, which biblical scholars call a riposte, they have a fancy name for it in seminary, well, it's very common in all of the Gospels. And in other ripostes of the New Testament, Jesus is arguing with the Pharisees or the religious scribes or other people who are, in positions of power, and he is always the victor in those ripostes. But not this time. In the encounter with the persistent mother of the Canaanite daughter, Jesus concedes that she is right. A mother's right to advocate for her sick child always supersedes any culture's taboos, religious reluctance or ritual, or national identity. And Jesus acknowledges her boldness and her faith, and he heals her daughter. About time. Well, this encounter opens Jesus' heart further to the imperative of mercy, doesn't it? That he's talking about. It changed him, and it changed the proclamation of the good news forever. Because you see, up until this point in the Gospel of Matthew, the Jesus story has been about the salvation of the house of Israel. But it changes hereafter. By the last chapter of the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus is telling his disciples to take the good news of God's kingdom to all people, to all nations, beyond the nation of Israel, to the whole world, and fulfilling God's original plan that he said to Abraham, that Abram would be the father of many nations. Sometimes it's easy to forget those original promises of God, because God is full of mercy. The signs of God's mercy are all around in Jesus' ministry. Jesus came to save God's chosen people, and then expanded the definition of what it is to be chosen. He took us all into a new perspective of living God's way in daily life. He's preaching a conversion of our hearts, and the result should be an outpouring of mercy and compassion, justice and hope of transformation, not just for the chosen, but for all God's people who are chosen. We're all chosen. The good news is about God's endless love and mercy, bringing forgiveness and new life to us, to everyone who accepts God into his life. This sermon is inspired by a mother's post on Facebook, and I can't read it all to you, but it's on Facebook. She's made it public, and as somebody I know who's in the Havre Church, and I just want to pull up just a section of it for you. Hang on a second here. Her second oldest daughter is going off to college. And this post is about, she's got a picture of her little daughter on the day she went to kindergarten. She's cute as a bug here in this picture. And she says, it's that time again, whether I was ready or not. Here it is. The night before you send your kid to college, it's a strange place. And this is a long one, and I'd be lying if I said I didn't cry while I was writing this post. You'll make dinner, and you'll wonder what dinner will be for her tomorrow. And she goes on, and it's tomorrow. You will have her car packed and ready, and her shoes and clothes boxed up, her laptop next to the front door. You'll lie down her tonight before she goes to bed and ask her if she's excited about college and her new roommate, and she'll say yes. She'll say she's nervous, and you'll tell her she's going to do a great job. And then you'll lay there remembering all the times you've tucked her in, all the bedtime stories and all the prayers said together, and she'll drift off to sleep. But long after she's drooling on her pillow, you won't be able to leave her side, and then she goes through a whole series of questions. What if she gets lost on campus and can't find her way to class? What if she gets her heart broke by some boy? What if she gets a flat tire? What if she misses home badly? What if she doesn't think about you at all? Did I let her have too much screen time? Did I play with her enough? Does she know that every single one of those days that we were home together were days that I wrote upon my heart forever? That every sandwich I made, every pool day, every morning we snuggled in bed together were gifts from God himself to me. And that even when I acted like I wanted to be anywhere else, there was nowhere else that was as satisfying to me as being with her. Does she only remember the days I lost my crap on her? Or does she think of the first spontaneous ice creams and the times that we ran and played in the rain and the silly faces and the smiles that I only took place between her and me? Did I affirm her enough? Does she even know that I love her even when she doesn't think I do? Does she remember God is with her? Did I listen to her enough? Does she know that she can tell me anything? Did I do enough? Love enough? Prepare her enough? And then she goes into this other mode as if she's talking to other moms, but it seems to me, oh gosh, I just lost it, that it's God answering her questions. I don't want to miss this, so let me go back here. I see you, Mama, and I know what you're going to do tonight. Oh, Mama, let's see. You'll be ready, and so will she. You'll survive the day, too. It'll feel like forever till you see her face again, but I almost guarantee you it will be smiling. She's a different kid. She's a big kid now. She grew up today, and she's going to make you so proud. You've got to let her go, Mama. She's got a whole world to change, and you've got a front row ticket to watch. God's got her, and God's got you. Perfect, isn't it? It's even more perfect when you get to read the whole thing. And you're probably wondering about the title of the sermon, Henda. Here's the backstory, but what inspired me was Heather's post. I was in Angola, and I bought a hymnal there a few years ago because I like to participate in worship and even learn the language by singing hymns. And I asked an Angola pastor about this particular hymn called Nzambi Henda. It uses this word, Henda, over and over. Nzambi is God, but what's Nzambi Henda? Oh, Henda, well that's grace in Kimbundu. It means the unending love of a mother. So here's God's unending love of a mother in a hymn. Despite what we face, despite our prides and our prejudices, the mistakes and errors, God's grace persists. God's unending love is always reaching out to each one of us. God's forgiveness and an opportunity for a new day is there every morning. Our God is not done with us yet, and grace persistently pursues us, just like that mother pursued healing for her daughter. God's grace pursues us, offering healing for us and an abundant life for us. God will argue and cajole and advocate with each one of us, trying to teach us lessons of grace that we might be healed and whole. Because God knows, even if we don't, that we are God's family, God's people, and God's church. Thanks be to God. So I'd like to invite us into singing a hymn. Just a couple of announcements. I'm afraid I'm going to have to run, so I'm going to offer a blessing and invite you to have Margaret. The only update on the bulletin is that there will not be a discussion of a prayer for Owen Meany this coming Thursday night. We're going to have that September 14th at 7 o'clock. We're moving it back because of harvest. And I will be here. I might not stay until 9 if there's nobody here at the church. But if you come by 7, I will be here from 2 until 7 or later as needed Thursday. So I'd like to close with a blessing for you and have you continue on singing some songs. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May God wrap his arms around you. May God hold you in peace and love forever. Amen.
Amen. Drive carefully.
I will.
Should we do hymn 560? 560.
And please do On Eagle's Wings too, because Bonnie has requested that one.